How often do we actually get the chance to make a cancer history? I'm not talking about just treating it or managing it, but to actually truly eliminate it as a public health problem. Well, right now, with cervical cancer, we are standing on the brink of that exact incredible opportunity. So let's dive into how. It really all starts with this one number, 99.8%. That's the percentage of all cervical cancer cases in the UK that are preventable. Yeah, you heard that right, preventable. They're caused by an infection that we can stop. Just let that sink in for a second. We're talking about a cancer where we know the cause in pretty much every single case. And that, of course, leads to the big central question. If we know how to prevent it, why on earth does cervical cancer still affect thousands of people? Why does it still cause hundreds of deaths every year in England alone? That's the paradox we're going to unpack today. So, to really understand the solution, we first have to get a handle on the problem. And the problem, well, it starts with a very, very common virus. The culprit is the human papillomavirus, or HPV. Now, it's super important to understand that most sexually active people will get HPV at some point in their lives. And for the vast majority, it's no big deal. The immune system just clears the infection. The real danger comes from persistent, long-term infections with specific high-risk strains. That's what can cause cell changes that might, down the line, turn into cancer. And this is not just a medical issue. It's a huge issue of global inequality. A staggering 90% of new cases and deaths happen in low and middle-income countries. This is a disease that hits those with the least access to preventative healthcare the hardest. This isn't a failure of science, not at all. It's a failure of access. Okay, so that's the problem. But the fantastic news is that we have an incredibly powerful two-part solution. It's a strategy you can think of as having a shield and a safety net. First up is the shield, the HPV vaccine. This is what we call primary prevention. Its whole job is to stop the problem before it even has a chance to start by preventing that HPV infection from ever taking hold in the first place. So just how good is this shield? Well, studies show the HPV vaccine is expected to prevent up to 90% of cervical cancers. That is massive. We have a tool that can stop 9 out of 10 potential cases from ever even happening. But what about the cases the vaccine doesn't cover? Or what about folks who weren't vaccinated? That is where our safety net comes in, cervical screening. Its job is all about early detection, finding any signs of trouble way before they become serious. And this process has gotten so much smarter over the years. Today, it's an HPV primary test. So what happens is the lab first checks your sample for high-risk HPV. If the virus isn't there, your risk is extremely low. It's only if a high-risk virus is found that technicians then look at the very same sample for any cell changes. It's just a much more accurate and efficient way to figure out who's really at risk. And this really shows you perfectly why we need both. The vaccine is the shield, right? It's best given before someone is ever exposed to the virus. Screening is the safety net, something you do regularly through life to catch anything that might have gotten through. They are two completely different tools that work together in this really powerful combination. Okay, so if we have this amazing shield and this strong safety net, where are the gaps? Why isn't the system working perfectly for everyone? This is really the conflict at the heart of the story. First off, it's about participation. Just take a look at this chart. It shows cervical screening coverage across the UK. And as you can see, in 2021-22, it was below 70% everywhere. That's well below the target we're aiming for. For the past decade, the number of people taking up their screening offer has actually been going down. Our safety net has holes in it simply because people aren't using it. And second, the problem of inequality is just so stark. This table shows that in England, cervical cancer rates are 65% higher in the most deprived communities compared to the least deprived. And let's be clear, this isn't a biological difference. It's a difference in access to and uptake of prevention. So who are we missing? Well, the data is pretty clear. It's the youngest people eligible for screening who maybe don't see the immediate risk. It's the oldest eligible groups, and it's people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds and some ethnic minority communities who continue to face these persistent barriers to getting care. But here's where the story takes a turn for the better, because knowing the problem this clearly allows us to create a very specific plan to fix it. And that is exactly what's happening, both on a global and a national level. So let's take a look at the roadmap. It all starts with the World Health Organization's global strategy, and it's a simple, powerful, and really memorable set of targets for the entire world to hit by the year 2030. It's called the 90-70-90 strategy. Let's break that down. The first 90 get 90% of girls fully vaccinated against HPV by the time they're 15. That's the shield. Next, the 70 ensure 70% of women are screened with a high-performance test by age 35, and then again by age 45. That's the safety net. And finally, the last 90, for those who do have precancerous cells or invasive cancer, we need to ensure 90% get the treatment they need. See, it's a comprehensive plan. It covers prevention, detection, and treatment. The whole thing. And this isn't some far-off dream. These are real, concrete goals with actual deadlines. The WHO targets are set for 2030. And building on that, NHS England has set its own ambition to eliminate cervical cancer by 2040. And what that means is getting the rate of new cases below 4 for every 100,000 people. So how are we going to get there? Well, by tackling the exact problems we just identified. We're talking about things like introducing HPV self-sampling, which would be an absolute game changer for people who find the current test difficult or uncomfortable. We'll need big national awareness campaigns, better digital tools like the NHS app for booking and reminders, and most importantly, targeted outreach to finally close those inequality gaps. So we end right back where we started. We have the scientific tools. We have a clear, data-driven plan. We know exactly what we need to do. The only question left, really, is one of collective will. Will we be the generation that actually makes a cancer history? The possibility is right here, right in front of us.